Hi guys, in order to heal, you must admit that you're unwell. In order to fix something, you have to admit that it's broken. But while Brian Cox, the actor, was explaining why Britain is struggling, the host of the show he was on, Laura Kuenssberg, attempted to sow doubt in the minds of the public instead. Now, as Brian was calling out the wall of silence on the issue of Brexit and the impact it's having on Britain's economy, and citing independent sources, Laura Kuenssberg interjected about the war in Ukraine and the pandemic. Now, why is she doing this?
My main problem, my main thing is that there's still the demon that we don't talk about, which is Brexit, and why we are so broke. And I've just got some figures here which somebody sent me, which I'm very grateful for. Brexit is costing the UK economy $1 billion a year, $100 billion a year. The OBR say, that's Bloomberg Economics, the OBR says 4% reduction in economic productivity because of leaving the EU. Analysis by Goldman Sachs found that Brexit is directly responsible for the UK economy growing 5% less since the vote in 2016.
Because of the loss of their bonuses.
Well, and what happened with the pandemic and what happened also with the war in Ukraine makes it very difficult to pull out actual strong conclusions, and economists argue about the effect. But Brian, you're frustrated it's not been mentioned in the campaign. I mean, what would you like to hear politicians saying?
In sense of what?
Well, on Brexit, so you're obviously frustrated
I just feel that we talk about lack of cash, we talk about lack of money, but when we realise, I didn't realise that real wages are expected to fall by 1.8%, a loss of £470 per worker a year, and it seems to me that we are still suffering from that, and we've not done anything about it.
Well, it will be interesting.
And so when we talk about other things, we can't really talk in terms of where we are, because we are suffering from Brexit.
Well, we'll talk in a sec.
Look, you notice what Laura Kuenssberg did there. He was listing off independent sources who were talking about Brexit. Obviously, they had accounted for the war in Ukraine and the pandemic, but they were focusing on Brexit itself. And what did she do? She interrupted and says, well, we can't really trust these figures because economists will say one thing and then they'll say another thing, or economists don't agree. Which economists don't agree? Which economists are saying that Brexit is not having an impact on the economy? If you had been listening to this only and you hadn't seen it, you would imagine that Brian Cox was speaking to a Tory MP. Because that's exactly what the Tories have been saying. Look, let's not talk about Brexit. Let's talk about the impact the war in Ukraine is having. Let's talk about the impact the pandemic is having. Both of those are having an impact. But Brexit is separate from that. Brexit is connected in their interactions, of course, but Brexit is economic sanctions that Britain has imposed upon itself. So that's a cost. The fact that it's more expensive to import and to export. There's extra bureaucracy to import and export. The cost for businesses where they have to either pay higher wages to British people to find workers, or where they're just closing down because they can't find workers. They have to bring people in from abroad. It's more expensive now. We know with the care sector, where it's much more expensive, for example, when it comes to visas. So these are all costs. These are direct Brexit costs. Now, the political parties don't seem to want to talk about these things. They say, well, look, we either going to make Brexit work or not talk about Brexit at all. But in order to fix things, you have to admit that there's a problem. You have to admit that something is broken. And a separate issue here is that Brian Cox is not a politician. He's an actor. And he's talking about something, and Laura Kuenssberg interrupts him as if he was a politician. He's not telling lies here. He's not spinning something. He doesn't have a narrative. He's laying out the facts. And you're challenging him with what? With nothing. Which is deeply dishonest. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.